Rajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Gopijana Vallabha Giribharadhari Gopijana Vallabha Giribharadhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Chira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari 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 Gopijana Vallabha Giribharadhari Gopijana Vallabha Giribharadhari Gopijana Vallabha Giribharadhari Gopijana Vallabha Giribharadhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Radha Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hey! Jaya Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Shri Radhe. Nitai Sachinandana Gaura Hare Jaya Nitai Sachinandana Gaura Hare Jaya Panchatattva Jayo Panchatattva Jayo Panchatattva Jaya Panchatattva Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Nitai Gaura Hariba 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 Nitai Gaura Hariba Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming today, and thank all the musical accompaniment that we have here, a little kirtan band for the Sunday program. We're going to speak today from Bhagavad Gita, as from the 6th chapter. It's called Dhyana Yoga. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read a little bit from the Bhagavad Gita. Actually, I'm going to read the full chapter because it helps us to read a chapter a day. Very important to read a chapter a day in Bhagavad Gita. Some days I miss it, but I try to make it up the double the next day. But anyway, if you've missed it today, this is a great opportunity to get it again today. The 6th chapter, one chapter from Bhagavad Gita. So I'm going to start off with the invocation prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So reading from the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter number 6, Dhyana Yoga. Actually, the reason that I wanted to choose this chapter is because it speaks almost repeatedly about the mind. The mind is quite a character in spiritual life, and actually the whole Bhagavad Gita is about controlling the mind. So this chapter is very important because of that, and in it there are a lot of hints on how the mind can be controlled, and actually how to make the mind a friend. Not that you have to keep on beating it all the time. I mean, it is important to beat it at some point. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said about it in the morning time and the evening time, and you're chanting as it wanders around a lot. But in this chapter 6, it talks about how to make the mind a friend. So I'll just start by reading the texts. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "One who is unattached to the fruits of his work and who works as he is obligated is in the renounced order of life, and he is the true mystic, not he who lights no fire and performs no duty. What is called renunciation you should know to be the same as yoga, or linking oneself with the Supreme, O son of Pandu. For one can never become a yogi unless he renounces the desire for sense gratification. For one who is a neophyte in the eightfold yoga system, work is said to be the means, and for one who is already elevated in yoga, cessation of all material activities is said to be the means. A person is said to be elevated in yoga when having renounced all material desires, he neither acts for sense gratification nor engages in fruitive activities. Now, Krishna is here speaking to Arjuna, the Bhagavad Gita. It's on the battlefield. It's right in between the two armies. Like, it's a pretty tense situation. Arjuna is there. He's a warrior. He's actually, after becoming very frightened in this whole situation, he's seeing his friends, his all his family in front of him, and now he's meant to get up and kill them. And Krishna is encouraging him to do this. But here, in the middle of all this, Krishna is giving him some instruction about the mind. So the context is very important here as well, to see what is actually happening. But here from verses 4 all the way through to 36, practically in every verse, Krishna is talking about the mind and how we deal with the mind. It goes all the way practically from chapter 6, verse 5, all the way to 6:33. And Krishna is speaking here for 28 verses, very, very specifically about an aspect which must be very important for us, which is the mind. We can, of course, in our spiritual life, or before we even come to spiritual life, we don't really make any differentiation between me and the mind. We basically feel that I am the mind, that's me. I am the body, that's me. So this is a common occurrence throughout the world. Basically, people feel that they are the mind and the body, that's who they are. You can't sort of separate them. I mean, why would you want to separate them? That's who I am. But here Krishna really makes a very major play, or he makes a very clear, he makes a very concise description of the mind and what to do with the mind as well. Not just the mind. He's already, after explaining that to us early in the second chapter, but now he's giving us some more indication of how to treat the mind. Okay, so I'll continue. So you'll notice just in every verse here Krishna talks about the mind. I'll stop after the first 3 verses here. I also want to make an invocation to my spiritual master, who's opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Jai. One must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. For one who has conquered the mind, the supersoul is already reached, for he has attained tranquility. To such a man, happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor are all the same. Now, Krishna is at this point is going to start almost glorifying the whole process of controlling the mind. And in fact, that's at the very beginning. He gives you a little hint that the mind can be a problem. And those 3 verses, he explains how it can be the enemy as well as the friend. But for the next so many 20 verses or so, he's going to show how the mind can be of great help, and how the mind is very much part of this whole Krishna consciousness process, but he talks about it in a very favorable way. So if you can tune in to what's being spoken by Krishna. A person is said to be established in self-realization and is called a yogi or mystic when he is fully satisfied by virtue of acquired knowledge and realization. Such a person is situated in transcendence and is self-controlled. He sees everything, whether it be pebbles, stones, or gold, as the same. A person is considered still further advanced when he regards honest well-wishers, affectionate benefactors, the neutral mediators, the envious friends and enemies, the pious and the sinners, all with an equal mind. So that's quite amazing, because we get some idea then how the mind is involved here. Because if we see friends and enemies, if we see the envious and the neutral and the affectionate benefactors, he's kind of giving us an indicator there that is the mind which is getting involved. But if we have the mind controlled, we see all these people as the same. If we see, pebbles, stones, or gold as the same. Like, can you imagine if you go out and walk out the door here now, and going out to your respective door, and you see 4, 5, 50-euro notes floating down the road? What would your view be? Would you think that's, there's some paper, or there's a piece of stone? No, you'd actually go and try to get them. I would anyway. But so the same way, Krishna is explaining how the mind is involved in a lot of our interactions, whereas somebody who's controlled mind is not as affected. A transcendentalist should always engage his body, mind, and self in relationship with the Supreme. He should live alone in a secluded place and should always carefully control his mind. He should be free from desires and feelings of possessiveness. Now, remember, he's talking to Arjuna here. Arjuna's in the middle of a battlefield. And now he's telling him that he should stay alone in a secluded place. Interesting. To practice yoga, one should go to a secluded place and should lay kusha grass on the ground and then cover it with a deer skin and a soft cloth. The seat should be neither too high nor too low and should be situated in a sacred place. The yogi should then sit on it very firmly and practice yoga to purify the heart by controlling his mind, senses, and activities and fixing the mind on one point. So Krishna keeps on instructing about the mind. One should hold one's body, neck, and head erect in a straight line and stare steadily at the tip of the nose. Thus, with an unagitated, subdued mind, devoid of fear, completely free from sex life, one should meditate upon me within the heart and make me the ultimate goal of life. Thus, practicing constant control of the body, mind, and activities, the mystic transcendentalist, his mind regulated, attains to the kingdom of God, the abode of Krishna, by cessation of material existence. So that's, like, can you imagine, right out in the middle of practically nowhere. No one knows where you are. You're just there and you're just meditating at this point. And this is what Krishna is speaking about. Now, two very interesting verses which we understand for how yoga, what yoga means in a practical sense of the terms, how we can live our life in such a way that we will always be in a yogic situation, that we will be controlled, we will be able to practice Krishna consciousness in a steady way. Steady is the word. There is no possibility of one's becoming a yogi, or Arjuna, if one eats too much or eats too little, sleeps too much or does not sleep enough. He who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, recreation, and work can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system. And then back again to the discipline. When the yogi, by practice of yoga, disciplines his mental activities and becomes situated in transcendence, devoid of all material desires, he is said to be well established in yoga. And here's a beautiful verse in which we can aspire to. It gives us a good indication of how our state should be. It's like a Puryamana Machala Patishtam Samudram Apaks Pavishanti Sadvat. That Kami is the last part of that verse. But basically it's explaining how when all the desires enter into the ocean is not disturbed. All the small rivulets, when they go into the ocean is so big, it's not disturbed by any of these things. So also the transcendentalist shouldn't be disturbed by all the different material desires that come into it. So, and this is another example that Krishna gives. That's the one of the ocean. This one is, as a lamp in a windless place does not waver, so the transcendentalist, whose mind is controlled, remains always steady in his meditation on the transcendent self. Now here's another 4 verses explaining beautifully about that state. In the stage of perfection called trance or samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from material, mental activities by practice of yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of the greatest difficulty. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. So, as we can see, these verses are all giving us ability to concentrate on the inner world, which we're concentrating on more, I'd say, at this point. Because the inner world is the real world, actually. It's the permanent world of the soul. And Krishna is giving us all these hints, indications, how to get there. He's creating a Google map, how to actually going there. You have to type in, I want to go to the spiritual world. And then Krishna gives us all the directions. He keeps on giving these directions how to get there. And then we hear it on the sat-nav. You go here, turn left at this corner, turn right here, go past here, and then you have 2 hours to get to you're 175 kilometers away, whatever. These indications are here. This is Bhagavad Gita is there, and Krishna has given us these indicators. Verse 24. One should engage oneself in the practice of yoga with determination and faith, and not be deviated from the path. One should abandon without exception all material desires born of mental speculation, and thus control all the senses on all sides by the mind. Gradually, step by step, one should become situated in trance by means of intelligence sustained by full conviction, and thus the mind should be fixed on the self alone and should think of nothing else. So all of these are very powerful verses. Each verse you could give a whole talk on, and Prabhupada, his purports here are amazing, and the way he builds up the whole case for transcendence. Now Krishna, first of all, in verses 5 to 7, he talked about how tricky the mind is. So now he gives us a little indicator. He's after explaining how we can get to this very elevated state. But now he's making some concessions again. He wants to tell us where there can be problems in what we're doing, so that we can actually, first of all, he says there step by step. We should take that very seriously. We can't expect to just immediately go there. The distance that we're trying to travel is a huge distance. We can it can take many lifetimes. But also, by the process of Bhakti Yoga, it can become, that you're stepping over the hoof print of a calf, which is very, very tiny. But if we listen very clearly and very carefully to what Krishna is saying, if we hear his direction, we can make this journey very quickly, and we won't stay here. We can finish up our business and leave this material world. We know how Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati referred to going to the toilet, the latrine. This material world is like the latrine. Finish up your business and get out of here quickly. Anyway, from wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self. So Krishna is giving us an indicator there that the mind it may not be always cooperative in this situation. In fact, we'll find out subsequently how the mind is bringing us back to this place over and over and over again. And unless we can get control of it, then we will be controlled by it. And the mind then becomes controlled by the enemies in the form of lust, anger, and greed. So we're trying to hear from Krishna, and we're not trying to be dictated by lust, anger, and greed. In that sense, the mind is the servant. So we want to have the mind as the servant of the higher self, and a servant of the directions of Krishna. That is the goal in Krishna consciousness. So the yogi whose mind is fixed on me verily attains the highest perfection of transcendental happiness. He is beyond the mode of passion. He realizes his qualitative identity with the Supreme, and thus he is freed from all reactions to past deeds. Thus the self-controlled yogi, constantly engaged in yoga practice, becomes free from all material contamination, and achieves the highest stage of perfect happiness in transcendental loving service to the Lord. A true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees every living being in me. Indeed, the self-realized person sees me, the Supreme Lord, everywhere. For one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me. Such a yogi who engages in the worshipful service of the Supersoul, knowing that I and the Supersoul are one, remain always in me in all circumstances. He is a perfect yogi who, by comparison to his own self, sees the true equality of all beings in both their happiness and their stress, O Arjuna. So from verses 1 all the way to 32, this is Krishna addressing Arjuna on the battlefield. And, you know, Krishna is obviously observing Arjuna. He knows what's happening in Arjuna's heart. He's probably looking at Arjuna's expression as well. Arjuna's feeling pretty much overcome at this stage, and he's obviously very happy hearing Krishna's words, and he's going along and is understanding what Krishna is saying. But Krishna is explaining very high philosophy to Arjuna at this point. So then Arjuna then starts to speak for a few verses. Arjuna said, O Madhusudana, the system of yoga which you have summarized appears impractical and unendurable to me. What's this? Arjuna, what's happening here? Are you doubting Krishna's words? No, he says, the system appears impractical and unendurable. And he says, and this is the crunch line, for the mind is restless and unsteady. And then a famous verse comes, Chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramati balavadriham tasyaham nigaham manye vayori vasuduskaram. So this is a verse that we probably in our minds say a lot during the day. For the mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, O Krishna, and to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind. So after all Krishna's wonderful philosophy, incredible description of what to achieve when the mind is steady and is the friend and is working in one's favor, Arjuna throws up all these roadblocks, practically speaking, you know. He puts all these different aspersions and says, how could this be? What about the mind? You know, are we talking about the same thing? Are we talking about the same thing? This is the mind we're talking about here. And the mind is completely obdurate. That's another word. It's completely non-cooperative. It's ready to throw in the towel at the least disturbance. If we're trying to concentrate on something, then the mind, well, what about this, and what about this, and what about this, and what about this, what about this? Especially if we're trying to perform our yoga practice, which of course we all know is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And where does the mind go at that point? That's our practice, chanting Hare Krishna. At this point, I think I'll add a little interlude by one of our spiritual guides, His Holiness Shivaram Swami. He gives a little hint again, it's actually a big hint, about how to control the mind. And it is about chanting Hare Krishna. Because we're the Hare Krishna movement. Everybody who's listening to this class, I am sure, chants Hare Krishna or has heard chanting of Hare Krishna, but I'm sure they're chanting Hare Krishna. So everyone here knows what I'm talking about. And we know all about chanting on rounds, isn't it? We all chant 1 round a day, 2 rounds, 3 rounds, 4 rounds, 8 rounds, 12 rounds, 16 rounds. At least 16 rounds? Very good. So that's the figure Srila Prabhupada wanted us to try to aspire to and practice. But sometimes we have problems, even whatever amount of rounds we're chanting, we always have problems concentrating on the mantra. So is there any way we can deal with that? Well, specifically for today and tomorrow and the next day, and probably for the next few weeks, we have a lot more time on our hands. I've read this instruction here on numerous occasions, and I've probably practiced it twice in the last year and a half, I think. And that is, I've chanted more. I've tried to chant up to 64 rounds. So this is Sri Ramaswami's advice. Often devotees ask what they can do to change or improve their habits in chanting. One very powerful thing to do is to take a day off and dedicate your time to chanting. Chant 64 rounds, or 108, or 192. If you do that, it will be an experience both in seeing how much your mind wanders and what it means to chant. It will give you a connection to the holy name, a strength and insight into the wonder, potency, and beauty of chanting and hearing the holy name. So do that. If as a consequence of reading this, you realize that you've been neglecting chanting, then simply do it. Get up at midnight and chant the whole day, midnight to midnight. Have that determination. It will change your life. You will get an experience that will give you strength. And Tesham Satata Yuktanam, 10:10, Bhagavad Gita. Krishna will give you the intelligence to improve and correct any defects there are there. And if you're doing it perfectly, then he will show you how to do it even more perfectly. Hare Krishna. So, yesterday was Ekadashi, and I started again to try to chant 64 rounds. I didn't get there, but I got 46 rounds. I got close, I was on the home straight, and I went out and did our shopping for the week. But anyway, that was a slight deviation there, but I have to say what he said was correct. I did get an experience. I did get a different experience than I normally get of Krishna. This is an experience that I get kind of throughout my existence, by my life and this body. I've had it probably about 5, 6, 7 times. Very, very short, almost in the milliseconds. Sometimes a bit longer. But what it was is that I got this experience that Krishna is there. He's actually there. I can experience Krishna. And it's the same person. That's the kind of beauty with age. I know there's not so much beauty with age in the sense of the wrinkles and all the rest. But there is a beauty with age in the sense that Krishna comes to you more and more and more and more and more. You get to recognize Krishna. You get to recognize, oh, this is Krishna. Oh, that's Krishna. Oh, I see. And particularly, I found that Krishna has come in difficult times. Even before I was a devotee, Krishna came. Krishna sometimes comes in very pleasant times as well. One can see Krishna in very pleasing reciprocations, but he can also come in difficult times. Most recently, I had an illness. It wasn't a very serious one, but it was quite painful. And but I actually got some indication that Krishna was there for me, which was powerful. It was the same Krishna who's been coming to me ever so slightly in all this times. Now, don't get me wrong. In the meantime, I'm forgetting Krishna, so much. But I found with that chanting of Hare Krishna yesterday, for that when that bit extra went to the higher numbers, kept on rolling through, rolling, and kicked out different thoughts that were coming along the way, and just kept on going, struggling a bit. Then I got onto a home straight, and then there was Krishna, So the mind is always throwing up these things. In my previous chanting for the previous so much before that, I didn't get that same intensity. I got some intensity though. I'm not denying that there is a potency there by chanting your fixed number of rounds every day and going more if you can. You will get that that comfortableness that you're there with Krishna, that lamp in the windless place, that you're there, you're out with Krishna. I've got a nice to chant in my house, but also when I'm out chanting outside, it's nice, I have a particular place where I walk where there's not many people around, so I can actually hear the mantra. And after so many rounds, I get into a kind of a comfortable space. I'm chanting and I'm hearing. And there's a lot more that goes on before that, but at this point, I can actually start to hear. So there is a great comfort in that chanting, because you're coming back again, and I'm back in this place again. And even more so now than before, because there's so many disturbances can get in the way of that. And it takes, sometimes you can get knocked off for a week or a fortnight, or, well, that's been my experience, then I can chant 4 rounds in the morning, 8 during the day, 4 at night, so whatever, there's different disturbances can come about. Whereas now, there's a lot less of that disturbance, I'm finding, So I'm getting quicker back to that space, there's less disturbances around. So in that sense, it is, practically speaking, a very important time to really build on the chanting. Read from the devotees. Satyananda Maharaj has this incredible book called the Living Name, and there's so many other books on chanting there. And Prabhupada, if you read these purports, so many times he talks about it. 8th chapter he'll talk about it as well in Bhagavad Gita. Just start meditating on those verses and then get into your chanting. It really gives great strength to what we're doing and gives great purpose to our lives. We know why we're here. And then, at the point of death, there'll be nothing else. We'll be just aiming for Krishna. That will be our goal. And this chanting will be there, will give us that serenity, that ability to have the invocation of Krishna, which we've been doing all our lives. Krishna's not, he's not absent. We may be absent, our minds may be absent, but Krishna's not absent. He's there all the time. And he's there specifically when we want him most, specifically at the point of death. There's nothing else we will be thinking of. Nothing else is of any importance at that point. There's nothing else. We just want to be with Krishna. Krishna will be there for us. Some devotees, they get this great realization of Krishna through deity worship. They do all this wonderful deity worship, massaging Krishna's lotus feet, touching his hands, Lord Chaitanya's hands in the air. They're doing all the different limbs of bhakti, and they make so much progress in that way. So this helps them remember Krishna more and more, and brings Krishna more and more into the present. So now, after Arjuna, going back to the text, after Arjuna creates these or speaks about these difficulties, Krishna then narrates what we need to do. Shri Bhagavan uvacha asangshayam mahabaho manodar graham chalam abhyasane noktu kanteya vairagina chakriyate. Krishna says, Lord Krishna said, O mighty armed son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind. Thank you, Krishna. But it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment. So I think that the real word there is by suitable practice. So what's our suitable practice? Chanting Hare Krishna and being happy. And then he also says, for one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult work. But he whose mind is controlled and who strives by appropriate means is assured of success. That is my opinion. So there's Krishna has given it to us in a nutshell. He's actually after giving us the formula to go back to him, just in those 2 verses. He's acknowledged our absolute weakness, because Arjuna has explained weakness, and Arjuna was a little bit more qualified than we are. But he has acknowledged the weaknesses that we have, but he says 2 words, by suitable practice and by appropriate means. So where do we find what those suitable practice and appropriate means are? Okay, let's listen to Srila Prabhupada's purport. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The difficulty of controlling the obstinate mind as expressed by Arjuna is accepted by the personality of Godhead. But at the same time, he suggests that by practice and detachment it is possible. What is that practice? In the present age, no one can observe the strict rules and regulations of placing oneself in a sacred place, focusing the mind on the supersoul, restraining the senses and mind, observing celibacy, remaining alone, etc. By the practice of Krishna consciousness, however, one engages in 9 types of devotional service to the Lord. The first and foremost of such devotional engagements is hearing about Krishna. This is a very powerful transcendental method for purging the mind of all misgivings. I just want to repeat that. This is a very powerful transcendental method for purging the mind of all misgivings. The more one hears about Krishna, the more one becomes enlightened and detached from everything that draws the mind away from Krishna. By detaching the mind from activities not devoted to the Lord, one can very easily learn vairagya. Vairagya means detachment from matter and engagement of the mind and spirit. Impersonal spiritual detachment is more difficult than attaching the mind to the activities of Krishna. So before I joined Krishna consciousness, I studied Buddhism and I studied the Mahayana, the Hinayana path, studying the Yoga Sutra and the Diamond Sutra, how to concentrate the mind on nothingness, ultimately. Boy, was that difficult. Spending time in the Botanic Gardens, kind of finding a quiet spot and sitting down. And it was better than not doing anything, though, I have to say that. But then afterwards, I tried the next was the Zazen, sitting in a place and trying to keep in the same posture for half an hour. God, so difficult. And the result, better than nothing, definitely. But that's what a lot of people are trying to do with their mind. They're trying to find out some way through their mind to become, to realize the Supreme. Oh God, just give it up. Prabhupada is emphasizing something else. Impersonal spiritual detachment is more difficult than attaching the mind to Krishna's activities. This is practical because by hearing about Krishna, one becomes automatically attached to the Supreme Spirit. This attachment is called parishanubhava, spiritual satisfaction. It is just like the feeling of satisfaction a hungry man has for every morsel of food he eats. The more one eats while hungry, the more one feels satisfaction and strength. Now, isn't that much better? You know, when you're hungry and then you eat some nice gulab jamun or some nice, wait a minute, you're probably on a health diet at the moment. Some nice salad, whatever it is that you like. If you're hungry and then you start to feel better, so much better than trying to adjust your back after an hour of feeling nothingness. This is Krishna consciousness. Similarly, by discharge of devotional service, one feels transcendental satisfaction as the mind becomes detached from material objectives. It is something like curing a disease by expert treatment and appropriate diet. Hearing of the transcendental activities of Lord Krishna is therefore expert treatment for the mad mind. And eating the foodstuff offered to Krishna is the appropriate diet for the suffering patient. This treatment is the process of Krishna consciousness. So thank you, Srila Prabhupada, for giving us this suitable practice and appropriate means by which we can come to Krishna consciousness. After I did my practice of Zazen and so on, I got into Zen Buddhism, another type of Buddhism. And in Zen Buddhism, I was very happy actually that I could perform some activities. That was one of the advantages of Zen Buddhism, in the sense that you do things, or your activity is allowed. And pretty wild activities, like anyway, I don't have to go into all the Zen doctrine of no mind, which is totally opposite of what I'm speaking about here, because you're trying to experience having no mind, even though you've got a mind. So try that one out. The sound of one hand clapping. So anyway, I'm not disparaging any pathway. By the way, here, sorry, I'm just trying to explain the variations, how to take the easy path. But reading one of the, I was reading an author called D.T. Suzuki, and another person was his name was Humphreys. He was the head of the Buddha Society in London, who I used to write to get different books. But in one of his books, he advised that we should try different traditions, luckily enough. And he suggested 2 books to read. And one was the Gospels of St. John, and the other was the Bhagavad Gita. So anyway, reading the Gospels of St. John brought me all the way back to Christianity at one point. And then in university, I studied the Bhagavad Gita. It was one semester was on the Bhagavad Gita. It was the only semester that I actually did well in my exams. But still, it was in the first year, and I spent another 2 years in that university, and still I wasn't happy. I wasn't feeling happiness. It was only until I went and to Trinity College to a talk by who later became my spiritual master, and to listening to all the devotees and their chanting and tasting the wonderful prasadam, that I actually finally understood what Bhagavad Gita was about. And hence that was something like 30-something years ago. And although there's been different ups and downs along the way, I've been nevertheless have to say that it's been an absolutely wonderful experience, and it's making me happier and happier as I get older and older, which is a bit of a paradox in a sense, but it does give that feeling of satisfaction that can only be got from the experience of the lamp in the windless place, or the ocean constantly filling up and never being disturbed. I'm not saying that there isn't disturbances there. As I said, there is little hiccups along the way sometimes, and there is lust, anger, greed, illusion, madness, envy. Maya is not going to let us away that easily. We have to really show that we're determined, and we have to get the mercy of the spiritual guide. So I just conclude here by speaking about the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. I'm going to skip some verses, so if you want to complete your chapter tonight, you have to read those verses. I'm just going to read the last one. Yoginam api sarvesham adgatanantaratma shadavan bhajate yomam same yaktatamomata. And of all yogis, the one with great faith, who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me. He is the most intimately united with me in yoga, and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. So Srila Prabhupada is our great Savior. He has come and given us this amazing enthusiasm, this amazing process by which we can take to Krishna consciousness. And he is unique among all acharyas. He's our founder acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and he's given us practical experiences by which we can come to Krishna consciousness. One devotee recently was, who's one of the leading devotees in our movement, explaining about how different management and methods are important in Krishna consciousness, but how they're totally subservient to desire, the desire which Prabhupada would always recognize, a devotee's intense desire to please him or to serve him. It's not through different karmic abilities that we have that we can go back to Godhead. No way. They're not currency. It's the desire which is the currency. This intense lolium to serve Krishna. But he also explained how Prabhupada was so expert in everything that he did, which is one of the qualities of devotee. And he just divided it into 5 different things, which I'll conclude with here. Prabhupada's enthusiasm. This is how he spread Krishna consciousness throughout the world. his humility, such incredible humility Prabhupada had. Even, like, can you imagine a pure devotee? He comes to the west coast of America. Shamasundar Prabhu says this story that Shamasundar had been so smitten by Prabhupada when he met him, first of all. But after a while, when he was serving Prabhupada for a while, he got a letter in the post to say that he had to go to jail because he was a drug dealer beforehand, which wasn't, it was a respectable profession back in the 60s, perhaps, among certain people. But so he went to Prabhupada. He spent a few months with Prabhupada, and he had so much love for Prabhupada, but now he felt that this was going to send Prabhupada away. So he said, Prabhupada, he paid his obeisance. Prabhupada, I'm afraid I'm going to have to go to jail for a while. And Prabhupada said, Krishna was born in a jail. So immediately Shamasundar didn't feel so bad, So Prabhupada had a great ability to communicate and so much to relate. He's a pure devotee, and he's relating with this devotee who's been around for 2 months. And he said, yes, but Prabhupada said then, what did you do to go to jail? And then again, Shamasundar felt under, well, Prabhupada, I was selling drugs. And Prabhupada said, I was also selling drugs. I was in Prayag Pharmacy, and I used to sell drugs all the time. So immediately he was able to put the devotee at rest and explain to him, through his humility, he was able to spread throughout the whole world this Krishna consciousness, and devotees were prepared to do anything for him. Prabhupada appreciated all the devotees. He had such appreciation for anything anybody did for this movement. And this is a very important point, because at the point of death we'll understand that Prabhupada will be there with us. So many examples of that, where Prabhupada comes and makes special arrangements for the devotee when they're leaving their body to hear about him or to be with them, because he is there. He's going to come. Prabhupada is going to come. If you do anything for this movement of Krishna consciousness, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, if you do anything to spread Krishna consciousness, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, whatever you do, whatever you give away, do this as an offering unto me. So whatever you do, Prabhupada will be there. He is so appreciative. There's so many examples of that. Devotees at the very, very beginning, I think it was Hamsadutta, Prabhupada says, we're going to set out a world Sankirtan movement, traveling Sankirtan party. So let's do it. And the devotees were all broke, and Hamsadutta didn't know what to do. So he had some of his other friends had this old bus, a completely broken down bus, and he was going to throw it out. So he wanted to get the bus so they could start the World Sankirtan movement. So he got this bus, and are you sure you wanted it? Yeah, yes. So he brought the bus to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was there, and so he said, Prabhupada, come out, I've got the bus for the World Sankirtan. And Prabhupada went out, and he saw this really dilapidated, battered down old bus, and there was only one seat in it, and so one seat for the driver. So Prabhupada went in the bus, and so, there's one seat, so anyone's in the bus is going to be messed around. So immediately Brahmananda put his 2 big arms around, held Prabhupada so that he wouldn't move. So the bus started, boom, 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 started to go, but then all smoke started to come in the bus, and Prabhupada said, oh, just like an Indian bus. And all the devotees thought, oh, it's reminding Prabhupada of India. So they felt really, they're encouraged. But then at the end of it all, then Prabhupada says, I think we should better get a better bus. But still, Prabhupada was prepared to, anything a devotee would do. And Hansa also finishes that story by explaining that, he was a dropout from college, and yet Prabhupada made him one of the BBT trustees, So Prabhupada he only wanted to see what the devotees were doing. Now, obviously, he required expertise as well, as we know, because Prabhupada recognized excellence in the devotees. He could see how devotees were inclined in certain ways, and Prabhupada engaged them very, very well, And but not only that, he empowered them then as well, and this is one of the last qualities which was mentioned, which Prabhupada, I think we should really take this to heart, in that he encouraged all the creativity of the devotees. Every devotee has a creative spark how to spread Krishna consciousness. There's so many ways in which we can do it. So Prabhupada, he would leave it to the devotees, especially in America. It's said that in America, he pretty much let the devotees manage everything. You know, he let them through their own device. Now, when I went to India, was a different thing, because he understood the Indian mentality and how to deal differently at that time, whereas the devotees were getting cheated by shall we say, superior business people. They knew how to, you know, manipulate differently. But Prabhupada was always encouraging devotees in their creativity. And I know everyone here who's watching, they all have their own creative spirit, you know, and they all like to engage it. That's what they like to do. We like to engage our propensity in Krishna's service, you know. We need some direction in that, but once we're set up and we're set up along the road and doing what we're made by God to do, we all have this quality that's given to us by Krishna to do, and we're all part of Krishna's plan. You know, Krishna has given us his ability, and he wants us to use it in his service. So we have to find that ability and then do it to the maximum degree. And I'll conclude with one of the last things that Prabhupada said, of course, was your love for me will be shown by how much you can cooperate to keep this movement together once I have left. So we have to be able to utilize all our different creative abilities in the service of Krishna. So that is a very powerful force, and see, that will please Srila Prabhupada. We'll get Srila Prabhupada's mercy. Prabhupada will come, you know, again, and I say again because, you know, he was so prevalent in the 60s, 70s, and he has been always throughout as well. But we can have another explosion, another Hare Krishna explosion, if we can actually work together with our different talents and work together to spread this movement far and wide, and to give people some hope, some real genuine hope, and they'll experience the love in their heart, which is what the bhakti is about, and it is bhakti yoga, which Krishna says is the highest. Yoginam api sarvesham. This is the highest form of yoga, and will give the greatest satisfaction to the heart. Hare Krishna. So that's the talk for today. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to Bhagavad Gita. Hare Krishna. Okay.
Just one comment that's just come in from Dina Dayal.
Oh, there's one comment from Dina Dayal, yes.
Okay. Hopefully we'll get some more questions. So Dina's comment really,
Yeah.
is that interesting in that in the original 1972 version of Bhagavad Gita, the verse 635 is translated by constant practice.
Oh, I see.
Instead of by suitable practice.
Oh,
yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So take both of those, constant and suitable. They're both of equal benefit. Yeah, I mean, both take it. You know, it's something which, you know, when we look in that verse toward in the 18th chapter, I think it's 1830. That determination which is unbreakable, and which is held steadfast by yoga practice, is determination in the mode of goodness. In other words, it's unbreakable. So unbreakable is kind of also similar to constant practice. So that's why Prabhupada very much spoke about chanting 16 rounds daily, you know, or a number daily. At least 16 rounds, he said to his disciples, actually. It was initiated disciples. At least 16 daily. And also, he wanted us to read the books. One of our spiritual guides, Vaisheshika Prabhu, he one time he went to Prabhupada, and it was a group of them went. It was a time when the book distribution was on fire in I think it was 75, 76. And Prabhupada was visiting the Los Angeles temple, and there was a specific arrangement whereby Prabhupada would go and would meet the devotees, and especially the Sankirtan devotees, because they were out all day long, and some of the experiences they had were phenomenal. Some of the austerities they performed, getting thrown in jail and being insulted and whatnot, so many. So they went to see Prabhupada. So when they went in to see Prabhupada, and one day, I think it was Rameshwar Prabhu mentioned that, Prabhupada, these are your book distributors. And the first thing Prabhupada says, and are you reading my books? it is very important to read my books. So Prabhupada then started to go on to preach to them to read his books. These were his crack team distributors who were doing what pleased Prabhupada the most, he said on several occasions. But he wanted them to read the books. And so therefore, this is why I was saying at the start about reading Bhagavad Gita 1 chapter every day. But read Bhagavatam as well every day. 10 pages, 20 pages, 40 pages. If you read 41 pages a day, we'll finish the Bhagavatam in 1 year. If you read 20 pages, it will be 2 years. I'm personally reading 20 pages at the moment. If you read 11 pages, 10 or 11, I'm not sure, it'll take 4 years. But read every day. So that's what constant practice, but constant or suitable practice is. Chanting and hearing. Prabhupada, I'll just find that section again in the purport to that particular verse where Prabhupada talks about, I repeated at that time as well. Sorry, I'll just get my glasses again.
6:35.
No, the first and foremost of such devotional engagements is hearing about Krishna. So the first and foremost of such devotional engagements is hearing about Krishna. This is a very powerful, transcendental method for purging the mind of all misgivings. The more one hears about Krishna, the more one becomes enlightened and detached from everything that draws the mind away from Krishna. So Krishna appeared. He appeared 5,000 years ago, and he's appearing in the holy name. But he appeared 5,000 years ago, and he performed all these pastimes. Why? So we could get attracted to hearing about Krishna, about all the amazing things he did. We were reading the third canto here as a family recently, and it was all, oh my God, it was quite explicit. You know, dare I say it? I don't know why I should speak like this, but it was speaking about how the man and woman are attracted to each other, and I was talking about the shapely figure of the female and the manly figure. Oh God, it was quite eye-opening or eyebrow-raising. You know, so if you're even looking for that, go. You know, it's there in the Bhagavatam. So nowadays we know what sells, or what they say. If it bleeds, it reads. You know, people want to see drama, something exciting, whatever. But it's there in the Bhagavatam. It's also there, Ramayana. I mean, I couldn't put down or stop listening to Ramayana the other day. Ramayana, Mahabharata. So this is how we, you know, by hearing about Krishna's pastimes, get absorbed in Krishna, and by daily worship and all of that. And I know, Dina, you do your worship of Shalagram Sheila religiously every day, and you do it by your Guru Maharaj's order. It's a powerful method, very, very nice method that's given by which we can keep the mind focused on Krishna. Another little pastime, seeing we're on the subject of pastimes. I know, is there another question or no? So I'll finish off with this pastime of the Arjuna, twin Arjuna trees. They were in this courtyard, and Krishna was coming through. Now the twin Arjuna trees, they were stuck in these trees for 100 years of the demigods, which is I think the figure is 4,320,000 years. You know, so they were there for a long time. They were cursed by Narada because they were proud. They had so much opulence, so much wealth. So they were there they were there as big tall trees for the period of 4,300,000 years, and they were conscious. Can you imagine to be conscious in a tree stuck in one place? We're finding it a little difficult to be stuck in one place for a few weeks, few hours, but they were stuck and they couldn't move at all. And they were demigods. They were used to such opulence, just like we've been used to such opulence, flying around the world, going here, going there, flying off in our cars. And, we were just smoothly going down the motorway, this smooth motorway, beautiful car. Now it's all ground to a standstill because of pride, So these demigods, because of their pride, were put into this particular, stand up where they couldn't move, basically. And then eventually, but they were in the beauty of the curse was that they were to see Krishna at the end. You know, Krishna was going to liberate them. That was Narada's blessing. So like we're stuck where we are at the moment, this is a blessing for us to actually delve deeper into the scriptures and to delve deeper into our chanting. It's a great blessing for us to do that, so that we can take the time. So like they were stuck there in that time, but then they were observing all the pastimes that were going on in Krishna, in Nanda Maharaj's backyard. They were observing all these pastimes going on. So eventually Krishna pulled the mortar, the wooden grinding mortar, or I think it was the grinding mortar, and it pulled down the two trees, and these two demigods came out, and they were absolutely astounded. They were absolutely absorbed in Krishna. You know, they saw this is Krishna here, but Krishna also said from the acharyas, they said that Krishna said to them, I normally don't talk to people like yourselves because you're too absorbed in material affairs. You know, I normally don't make myself visible to you. But because my great devotee Narada said to me that to deliver you, this is why I'm doing this. So all the Brijbatis are on, they're only seeing Krishna, or the little boys, and they're only seeing Krishna, and then they're seeing these two characters coming out, and they're seeing Krishna speaking with him. But Krishna's, the residents don't see this. But Krishna's telling them this. Normally I don't, but because Narada is such a great servitor, because he's always performing devotional service. What's his devotional service? He's going around the world and he's telling everybody about Krishna. He's leaving Krishna's association to go to tell people about Krishna. That's his job. So, you know, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, there will never be one more dear to me than the person who gives this message to my devotees. So that is what devotional service is. And that's what Prabhupada has set up. The whole Krishna consciousness movement is so as to tell other people about Krishna, because that is Krishna's service. The devotee is sometimes even more merciful than Krishna, because the devotee is going to these out of the way places to tell people about Krishna, and Krishna doesn't even go, as in a sense, you know. So Narada is like that. So we have to take that position like Narada. We're servants of the servant of the servant. So we have to also do these particular activities. So that when the demigods came out, tears were coming from their eyes when they saw Krishna, but Krishna wanted them to go back to the spiritual world. So they vanished because they were going to disturb the place, you know, if they were there. The little babies could see, oh, those two guys, but the rest of the residents couldn't really see, and so with tears in their eyes they went back. But they went back to the spiritual world and they started doing their kirtan and chanting the holy names, and so then again, eventually they went to the spiritual world. And when all the Brijbasis came out, what happened? What are those trees lying on the ground? The kids, two big fellows came out. And they weren't believed, you know. Or some people did believe. But that's some of the pastimes of Krishna. So that's what we have to do, is to become absorbed in the pastimes of Krishna. Because they will draw us away from all the activities which are drawing us to the material world, like the mundane news, mundane sports, politics, gossip. I don't need to go on. I'm sorry, I'm bringing the tone down by reminding everyone of these things, but this is what the devotional service is about. Thank you, Prabhus. Thank you very much for staying with me throughout. By Krishna's grace, next week we'll have another wonderful class at 3:30. Remember to tune in to Bhagavatam class tomorrow morning, Sanatana Govinda Das, from 7:30 on Sankirtan. Actually, we'll put it on Dublin Krishna Temple. It's a Facebook page anyway. We'll put it on Dublin Krishna Temple. I haven't got it here unless somebody quickly tells me what it is. Fantastic class. You'll hear Sanatan's great realizations, and throughout the week we'll have devotees giving talks. Tuesdays and Thursday we'll have further discussions from the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Wednesday again, Sanatan Govinda Das has Bhagavad Gita class 7 o'clock. And then every day in the temple at 7 o'clock, the devotees are doing the Nrsimha person reading from Krishna book. Sankirtan Yogi Ki Jai. Hare Krishna.